Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum was launched to inform, inspire, motivate diverse talent to join the energy workforce by intentional recognition of current female energy leaders who contribute to growing Florida's economy and the purposeful sharing of their professional journeys. We are creating opportunity. Join me each week as we meet new leaders in energy and listen to their important roles in an industry that is vital to the country's future. Welcome, viewers and listeners. We've been blessed to host the greatest talents in energy this year. This hour is no exception. I have the privilege of hosting Bentina Terry today. Many of our listeners know Bentina from her time in Florida, serving with Gulf Power, and from all of her Florida civic engagement during that time. But today she joins us from Gulf Power. She's joining us all the way from Atlanta. And we've got so much to cover today. We also have breaking news from Bentina. So, sister, I want to dive right in. This is personal, right? This is not work for me and you. I purposefully didn't want to talk to you before the show so we could talk right here in front of everyone and share all of the good times and catch up on what you've been doing the last 12 months. And because it's never boring, Bentina, you've already changed the introduction on me. I was all prepared. I was all prepared to introduce you as what you were currently doing in Gulf and Georgia Power. See, I wondered how long it would take me to do that at Georgia Power. And then just today, breaking news. So it's my pleasure to introduce Bentina Terry, Georgia Power's new Senior Vice President of Region External Affairs and Community Engagement. And Bentina's going to tell us all about that in a minute, but it's a big deal, big promotion. So let's get you properly introduced and turn the microphone over to you, Bentina. This woman was recently named the 100 most influential women in energy by the Energy Diversity and Inclusion Council. You're one of the senior executives, as of today, even more senior, in the largest electric subsidiary of Southern Company. You're responsible for the company's operations, sales, customer service, economic and community development, and economic activities that impact 1.2 million customers across Atlanta. In Florida, you were the chair of Florida Chamber, Leadership Florida, the Pensacola Chamber. And I know, Bentina, I've forgotten some things. But, let's start with this as your first question. It's not about the titles, right, Bentina? These are leadership examples. Wherever you go, you are a thought leader, a servant leader. What is it about that works for you personally and professionally, Bentina?
So it's, I'd say it's kind of how I'm wired. And I was really fortunate to have great parents. In particular, my mom, who is just the cornerstone of everything for me. But she was always engaged externally a lot. She was a leader in our community and has continued to be. She chairs the school board back home at 80 years old. She's the chair of the Cumberland County school system. So she inspired and instilled in all of us a sense of dedication, and that leadership is dedication, right? Leadership is service. And so it's just kind of how I was raised and how I was wired. So I was lucky to have her great example.
I thought of this actually last night as I was thinking about what you and I would be talking about. And it felt like you were in Florida for a long time because I had the pleasure of meeting you early on, but in the grand scheme of things, you weren't in Florida very long.
Well, it's 10 years. It was 10 years.
Yeah. But like I'm native. And so it's 10 years. That's actually longer than I thought. Yeah. But in 10 years, you made so many friends and had such a great impact. And some of that, right, would you agree with me that you also had the support of some great champions, right? So in addition to the influence your parents clearly, naturally provided, but you had some good mentors and good champions. What was the importance of that?
So, I mean, when I came to Florida, Susan Story, who was the CEO of Gulf Power at the time, was just one of those people who mentored me and guided me and really said, this is your job, right? You make the most of it. We had great conversations about the difference between personal power and professional power, right? So you have a title that carries some power, but personal power is what you bring into every single situation that allows you to influence and get things done. And she also was just a great, she was just a great person to model that behavior of how you get engaged, how you make an impact. And so it was easy. She introduced me to people. She opened doors. Just when she left, and she did leave Southern Company to go be the CEO of American Water, which was a big deal, right? It was hard to see her go because she had been such a mentor to me. But the CEOs who came after that, Mark Crosswhite, who was our CEO for a shorter period of time, and then Stan Connolly, they were all just phenomenal mentors and guides within the company. And then there were so many people like you, Lila, in the community who just really were always there to support and to advise and to just be someone that I could say, hey, I don't get this. I don't understand it. Help me out,
Yeah.
And so it made my time in Florida. It was a quick 10 years. I will say that. I never woke up and thought, oh, my God, this is a painful place to be. I woke up every day going, I love this place. And it was hard to leave.
Well, we certainly miss you. Florida misses you. It's interesting to me, Bentina. Many of us talk about you behind your back in the greatest way, and many of us have looked forward to our time together here. I've gotten great feedback, and so many people that have wanted me to say hello to you. It takes a special person to have that personal and professional impact on many. I mean, in terms of the regulator, you got to know the Florida Public Service Commission, you got to know the stakeholders, the consumer advocates, and I know certainly in Pensacola, you touched many. And the reason I've taken you there in this conversation is I often get the question, what's more important, having a mentor and a champion? And obviously I knew you would talk about Susan and Stan. And a couple of things I've tried to impress upon our rising stars is women helping women, right?
Mm-hmm.
The importance of women helping women,
That's
but
right.
also, at least as it relates to me as well, I've had male champions in my career. It's been the men who have, recognized the hard work, right? Bentina, in your case, recognized the hard work and been willing to put you forward and creating those opportunities. And that's not to be discounted nor neglected. I think you're an example of paying that forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the mistakes sometimes we make as women. I would say also as people of color is that we believe or look to people who are just like us to be our mentors and our champions. And in my career, the people who gave me really big breaks, a lot of them were people who looked nothing like me and were nothing like me, right? So they were older white males, primarily, being at a utility. A lot of them were technical or engineering types, didn't grow up like I grew up, but saw something in me and decided that they wanted to help sponsor or support me. And that's not to say that I haven't had plenty of people in my career who were people of color, or like I just talked about Susan being a woman, but they ran the gambit. And it's developing those relationships across cultures and across genders that really give you an opportunity to let someone get to know you and give them an opportunity to champion and support you.
Right, absolutely. We have our first question from the audience, and I encourage questions. I mean, Bentina and I have a lot to talk about, but we want your questions. So the first question, they're taking us back to the announcement we made in your introduction. What's this new position, Bentina?
Okay, so it is the Senior Vice President for Region External Affairs. That's a very internal title to us at Georgia Power, and Community Engagement. So that means I have statewide responsibility for our relationships with our partners, and that would be external partners. So that would be local governments, county commissions, city councils, opinion leaders, community leaders in all of the communities that Georgia Power serves across this state. So I have a team of about, think it's about 45 folks who are in communities across Georgia, and they help make those connections for our communities and our customers with Georgia Power. So that may be assisting with a power line issue, to a power bill issue, to a how do we get engaged in the community issue. And then the community engagement piece is I'm now responsible for our statewide volunteerism. That includes, we have an employee volunteer organization, Citizens of Georgia Power, and we also have an employee kind of donation organization where our employees can make donations that we then give to our community, Club of Hearts. And that's also in my purview. And then our relationship with our historically disadvantaged communities. So it is with people of color, women, LGBTQ, and seniors. And so it's really about what I think of the role is how we engage across the state of Georgia with our customers and our communities.
So, and that is a huge responsibility, but opportunity for the company as well. And yes, it's an opportunity for you, but it's an opportunity for the company in light of the times we're in. Yes. One of the first times after you joined Georgia Power, I saw your name in the paper was in reacting to, do you remember when the Atlanta airport lost power?
Yes.
And you were out there. You were out there doing what you do naturally, communicating what that was. And as I recall, you really received very high marks for that because you were transparent on behalf of the company. You communicated the message well. And I don't know, maybe in Atlanta you had some blowback, but as a country, it looked like you were able to minimize that negativity.
I'm lucky to work for a company that takes responsibility. Yeah. Right. And so, and that was our CEO at the time, Paul Bowers. That was really his leadership, that we're going to go and we're going to say clearly what happened, that we knew at that time, right? We developed more information over time. And that we knew that it had disrupted the lives of our customers and people who were coming in and out of Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. So I'd also say that what we did on the back side of that is now we are in the process of building 100 generators that will be at that airport to ensure that, no power is 100% certain, right? And so we know that, but that's a very crucial customer. And so out of that, that's where we ended up, is there will now be 100 generators there at that airport to provide power. And I'd say that was a great partnership between the city of Atlanta and Georgia Power to say, okay, this is what happened. Hadn't happened to any other airport, or hadn't happened that often to any other airport in the United States. How do we create a situation that makes it better for our customers? And so that's where we are in that process. And it's a great solution for our customer.
Absolutely. So here's another question, Bentina. What advice would you give to women just starting out in their careers to pursue those leadership roles?
So the big one is to make those relationships, right? I think that we sometimes, in particular, if you're someone who's a little bit more low key, you kind of think, well, if I just do my best, then it'll be okay. People will see my work and that should speak for itself. But the reality is there are a lot of people that work hard. There are a lot of people that are smart. And sometimes what distinguishes us is the relationships that we make with other people and how we react and respond within the organization from a behavioral standpoint. And so it's really important that in a room, your boss is not the only person who can speak for you, speak for your skill sets, speak for what you've accomplished, speak for who you are as a person. And building those relationships, that's what makes that happen. So it's just, think about it early in your career. Get advice and counsel on how you can do it so that you don't do it the wrong way. There are other people, like we just talked about, mentors who can help you figure out the best way to do it and the best relationships to form. But it's really important that you think beyond the work that you do.
Absolutely. And you and I have personally spoken about this. One of the differences between the mentor and the champion, right? The champion will make your case even when you're not in the room, right?
That's right.
When you're not we would like to think all women will have a seat at the table. But when you're not at the table, hopefully your champion is making that case on your behalf. Not that the mentor can't or won't, but it really is a different function, right?
It is. It is. It's very different. Yeah, both are important, but that champion, and I have people often ask, well, how do I get a champion? Well, you don't pick champions, they pick
Right.
you, right?
Right.
Champions are sponsors. Sometimes people call them sponsors. They pick
Mhm.
you, and they pick you based on the relationship they form and what they see from you. And so those are very, very important because they are in rooms that you'll never even think about, right? They're in
Right.
conversations that you never even get to see or know are happening.
That's exactly right. So Bentina, on the stakeholder engagement piece, the role you have in the community related to stakeholder engagement used to be, I'm showing my age, not trying to call you out, you are younger. Used to be stakeholder engagement in the regulatory process meant we're going to go build those relationships with our customers. So when we apply for something at the PSC, it won't be an awful customer meeting, right? And we're not going to hear anything from the customer for the first time there. But stakeholder engagement in today's regulatory world is a whole different thing. If you agree with me, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it really is. So the one thing I feel, again, fortunate with Georgia Power and Southern Company and Gulf Power is that our motto, especially at Georgia Power, is that we're a citizen wherever we serve. And there's a reason why we have people in all of our communities to connect with them. And you cannot do stakeholder engagement when you need them. You can't wait till you know you're going to file that rate case or regulatory proceeding to say, I want to get my customers engaged to know what's going on. They have to already know you. They have to already know what you're doing in your communities and for them as customers. And when I was at Gulf Power, one of the things we were most proud of is that people would come to those hearings. You remember this, Lila, and they would say, I don't really want a rate increase, but I like Gulf Power. And in that setting, that's the best you can get, right? Nobody wants a rate increase, no matter how much it's needed, no matter what it's going to be invested in. But to have customers say, but I know they're a good company and I like them, I just don't want my rates to go up. And that's what good stakeholder engagement gets for you.
Absolutely. And the reality is companies, I've learned this, of course, after the fact in private practice, and it's not like the companies want to file the rate cases either. They are a bear, right?
Yes.
Boxes and boxes of information. How do you engage at the very local government level where local politics can be challenging? So, the understanding the role of politics in that equation to make them successful, he or she successful in terms of what they need to deliver for their constituents, but yet help them understand the role of energy and the pressures that you have.
Well, we try to form those relationships thinking long term, right? You're really thinking, how can we best get to know each other? And how can I understand the needs of this particular community? It's been really interesting in the work that we're doing now, in particular, is we're meshing their energy needs with their other needs. So more about the energy equity piece, right? So talking to our customers about how the products or services we provide can help create equity in their communities. And that's gotten to be more and more important. So it really is about understanding what their needs as a customer, that municipality or that county is, and then helping them understand our business. And in particular, figuring out the places where we meet. But that's why you can't just be about your business. You have to be about their business too.
Understanding what they need and we all have to deliver whatever success looks like to our organization, right?
That's right. That's right.
How challenging has it been during COVID, though, to build those relationships? And then you've got, the term limits that you've got to deal with and elections that change the faces every 4 or 6 years, depending on your state.
So my team, when we first came home, right? So I always tell people 65%, roughly, I think that number's right, of Georgia Power's employees, they just had changes in how they did business, but they, of course, are line crews and working at the plants. And so they didn't come home. But for my folks in particular that are so relationship based, it was tough. And the first thing I said to them, though, was to think about, you've already built these relationships. So for the people that you've already got a relationship with, you're just changing those dynamics. You just may have to talk on the phone as opposed to, of course, meeting them face to face. But I have to acknowledge I had some new people who came into roles. There were new people who came into the governmental roles, and we just all had to learn how to create a different interface. So how do you pick up the phone and call? How do you do, when we could, more one-on-one outdoors type stuff? So it was really just about adapting and changing, adapting what we were doing and changing to the new environment. And I've got an awesome team, and they did an excellent job at that. Now, did some of them, they'd say, when can we get back? When can we get back? And I'd say, well, we'll get there. We'll get there. We just want to make sure, primarily as Georgia Power, that we keep you safe. And that is the most important thing. So we'll figure out how you can get back to doing what you used to do, or some variation of it. But for right now, we're just going to have to figure out how to do it well, but different.
Yeah, absolutely. And it tested everyone's adaptability to technology, right?
It did.
It really forced all of us to get a little bit more knowledgeable.
Well, but here is the interesting thing we talk about at work is that before we were like, oh, people can't work at home. Oh, no, we can't do that, right? And then we flipped the switch and instantly learned how to do something that for a long time in the utility sector, at least, we were very reluctant to do, a little bit more old school, right? So it was, but it really showed us how we could first move quickly, not something, quite honestly, that we're known for in our sector, and utilize technology much more heavily. And more than that, as a leader, trust in your people, right?
Yeah,
that accountability is not built by seeing them.
No, right. And I don't know that it was unique to the utility sector either. It's like, I think this working remotely has also made all of us in management trust our team, right?
That's right.
Before he or she can't possibly be working 8 hours at home. I think, two things have happened. It's really expedited our ability to be trusting, and then we're always on now. If we thought we were always on before, we are always on now. And I think the conversations that are happening now tell me if this has been your experience, Bentina, twofold. One, making sure you do turn off, so you've got your family time and you're resting. And the second thing is it's making corporate America take a look at, well, maybe there's some efficiencies in not having everyone at the office all the time. And maybe we can let go of some of the offices and the office space and the rental space. So it's a forced conversation on efficiency that I think wouldn't have happened pre-COVID.
Yeah, you're precisely right. I mean, I know one of the things I worried about with my people was their mental health.
Yeah.
Right. Because too, you don't know what people went home to. Right. And so for some people, work was actually a relief valve for them. And so trying to help those employees adapt. And then remember, everybody was home. So your kids were there suddenly. And so, and you're right, Lila, we had to tell people, no, you need to shut off at 5 or 6 o'clock. You shouldn't be on at 8 or 9 o'clock. And I've noticed that people have gotten, now they'll schedule a meeting for 6, 7 o'clock at night, a work meeting. They never would have
never done it. Unless it was an emergency, right?
Unless it was an
emergency. Yeah, or we had a rate case we had to file or something. Those were the exceptions, those 6 a.m., 7 a.m. calls, or the 7 p.m. Walkthroughs. But no, now it's okay.
You have to have those boundaries, and that's what we talk about a lot. You do, and it's okay. And I don't do that to my folks, and so you do have to set them, because you'll be working forever. But you also, right, it's a new, the efficiencies we can determine from what we can do with space and how we do activities. I have a statewide organization now, and I think before I'd feel this compulsion to get everybody together. And now I'm like, well, maybe not. Maybe we will do it virtually. We don't have to get everybody in a room, or if we do, it's much more, it's less frequent, right? So how can we use technology like we've been doing while we were out to meet and to get together and to connect?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so because you know him so well, I'm just going, this is personal. This is me and you chatting. It's when you said, some people can't wait to get to work, right? I thought of me and said, of course, we can't work together, right? So what I did after COVID, I made him open an office for me. So I actually still come to the office because we cannot work together, right? Unlike you and Tony, we cannot work together.
Well, but I will tell you, Lila, talking about that whole, you never know what was going on. So My in-laws, my father-in-law has Alzheimer's, my mother-in-law has dementia or something. She's got some memory loss issues too. And at the beginning of COVID, we brought them home with us because we realized that they couldn't operate in this new environment and remain safe. So for 9 months of COVID, I had my in-laws living here. And a father-in-law with Alzheimer's and a mother-in-law with memory issues meant there was a lot that we would have to handle or deal. I mean, I'd be on a call like this, and my father-in-law would appear at the door asking to go outside or saying that he's got to leave or, something. And we would have to manage through it, and so we managed through it, but it was very, very, very different, very different.
But it's life, right? And I think that's the other thing working remotely has shown all of us, the ability to be accepting of the in-laws in the background, the child. I actually watched a playback interview with the Surgeon General, coincidentally. I think it was last night. The days run together, and his young child showed up as he was being interviewed by one of the cable networks, and it was just fine. Or the dogs barking in the background, and again, cut even 3 years ago, right? That would have been, And so this is life. It's life, and it's hard to find positivity out of the COVID experience, and maybe we're grabbing things where we can find them. But I think your experience is an example of what was happening across the country, right?
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. It was nice to see people's kids.
Yes.
Right. And it was so regular to see a kid. And I remember we were on one call and one of my employees, her kid was all in the screen and all over her. And she texted me and she said, it is either she crawls all over me or I'm not on this call. Right. And I was like, I don't care. Just, it's all right. We'll make it through. But dogs and seeing puppies, so many people got puppies. And,
absolutely.
And then from my perspective, we never could have had our in-laws come live with us, given what was going on with them, if it hadn't been for COVID. Because we were home.
Interesting. Right. That's exactly right. So we have a question from our viewers, environmental justice. And I was going to ask you about this. Rightly so. We're in a time where there has been more emphasis on the need to look at where facilities are located, how we conduct our business in the context of environmental justice. Where does your responsibility in your new role fit into that?
So I'm responsible for our social justice work, which is, of course, that broad envelope of all the work in our communities that have to do with equity. And it's great work to be able to do. I get to have some phenomenal conversations and meet some wonderful people who are doing great things in our communities. And the question is, of course, how can we be engaged? And then what does equity look like for us? And of course, that includes our environmental justice work. I have a phenomenal partner in that, a guy named Mark Berry, Dr. Mark Berry. He actually has a PhD and he runs our environmental affairs group. And we are connected at the hip as we work through the environmental justice issues and trying to figure out what does our environmental plan look like, environmental justice plan, what does that footprint look like for us, and what should be the company's role. So it's great to be able to work with Mark, and it's great that the company is focused on thinking about these things and figuring out what our environmental justice footprint is going to look like.
And your company, well, I'll say it at the parent level, because I follow Southern companies, and Southern Company Gas. And I remember that your CEOs were very quick in coming out with statements after the George Floyd murder, the public service announcement messages that played, really not just shining a light on all of these issues, but being at the forefront in terms of industry leaders to participate in the dialogue. Bentina, so what did that mean to you personally, right? I know what it meant to me personally. What did it mean to you?
So it meant so much to know that I worked for a company that didn't have to be prompted, right? There were some other companies where their employees kind of had to raise up and ask for this. There was no prompting. It was very, very quick. And we did it again after the violence against Asian Americans. And before, we were doing that, actually, we did that when you first started seeing the violence rise. not waiting until the unfortunate events that happened here in Atlanta. So I just feel it is awesome to work for a company that cares about these issues, that thinks and speaks about these issues. Some of your viewers may not know, but our new president of Georgia Power is an African-American male, which has just been phenomenal for us. In our sector, there just aren't that many of us at those levels. And his legacy, part of what he thinks of as his legacy, is about this social justice work that we do. And it's just great. And Tom Fanning, who's the CEO of Southern Company, and Jim Carr, who's our general counsel, I mean, everybody is really thinking about what this should look like for us. And it's inspiring as an employee to be able to work for a company that cares.
And let's go ahead and recognize Chris by name. Chris Womack is who you're referring to. And what's so interesting about Chris, yes, he's now the CEO of Georgia Power, but Chris is not new to the industry.
No.
So Chris has been with the Southern Company for a long time and has had opportunities that he's really grown in, including doing your federal work for the whole company, right? For the parent company. Yeah. And it's really, I don't want to be patronizing, but so many of us have grown up in the industry, and in a time, and certainly I think he would agree, right? But in a time when we're talking about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, providing that exposure to you, to Chris, and others you and I know personally in the energy industry is really critical in recruiting other women and minorities into the industry, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, and if I look at the officers of Georgia Power, we have one Black female, one white female, two white females, one Black male, that's not including Chris, and two Black females. We just promoted another Black female to our senior reporting directly to Chris. And then one white male. I mean, it is incredible that the majority of the folks on our, reporting to the CEO of Georgia Power are women or people of color. Right. And you look across the sector and you don't see that. And I mean, I could go across our utilities and you would see lots of very prominent people of color and women, in particular African Americans, who are in that C-suite. And it's just awesome to work for a company that values that and is living it, right? So some people say it, but they don't live it as much.
Well, I think you and I used to call it purposeful inclusion, right?
Yes.
And it's finally, I'd like to think it finally makes a difference. And look, but the skills are important. Hard work and ethics are critical. So as you know, in 2015, I launched Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum, with the first forum actually going live in 2016. And the whole purpose was to be able to share personal stories of women like you, with the idea that through your personal journeys, you could inspire, inform, inspire, and motivate the next generation of workforce talent. And it's really neat, Bentina, we're now coming into the 6th year. And what I'm finding is that more and more women are willing to share their personal stories. It's not taboo. More and more women are helping other women, which is wonderful. Back when I was on the PSC and you were just starting in the energy industry, there weren't many people that looked like us. There weren't very many women in the industry at all. So certainly have come a long way in that regard. But the third thing I've noticed is that there's still room to grow. So the women who attend the forum are networking with one another, and they're finding their mentors, and they're getting the champions. And that's been pleasant to watch. One of the things I've always heard you say, and I'd love for you to elaborate for our audience, you've always said, I make my own choices every day. And knowing more about you than we are going to talk about, what were those choices that got you to where you are now, right? There have been some purposeful decisions in your life. What of that can you share with us today?
I think the first choice we all have to make is to be the best version of ourselves. And too often, I have a really, really good friend who's also in the energy sector, and she happens to be a little quieter than I am. And if you can't tell, for those of you that don't know me, I can be a little gregarious. And somebody had her come see me. They said, go see Bentina. She can talk to you about how to have that executive presence, right? That I think they were saying she didn't have. And the first thing I told her is, you can't be me. You can be the best version of you. So take that personality that you have and figure out how to magnify and amplify that in a way that fits your personality. And so I tell people the first choice you have to make is the choice to be yourself. And if the place you are, the company you work for is not where you kind of fit, then start asking yourselves questions about that. I think the other thing that we often kind of forget is you also make lots of choices that impact that path for you. And sometimes I think we feel like we should rail against those choices, right? So I'm not a financial person, right? I'm okay with numbers. I'm not great with numbers. I understand the balance sheet enough because I'm a senior officer, but if I will never be in the CFO job, right? I mean, at least I can't think of a circumstance under which that makes sense. So that is a place that I don't have a lane, and that's okay. And oftentimes we believe, or we're not comfortable with the choices that our lives have made. I could have gone to get an MBA. I could have gone to do a bunch of other things that might have made me more prepared for that. And I chose not to. And so that means that lane is limited to me, but that's okay. And I'd give you another example that I don't talk about a whole lot, but when I was at golf, my father got really, really sick. My brother died. He was 5 years older than me, and we were very close. And my father got really sick, and he ended up being diagnosed with ALS. And I went to the CEO of Georgia Power at the time and said, I really need to get closer to my folks. I mean, Gulf Power. I really need to get closer to my folks because Pensacola was 2 legs of a flight or 8-hour drive from my dad. And so we talked within the company, and this opportunity came up for me to come back to Atlanta, and I came back to Atlanta. And that was the most important thing to me. It didn't matter what happened to my career after that. I mean, I was trusting that it wasn't going to fall off the edge of the earth, and it hasn't. Right. But I also told the company that I had a priority and a choice that I needed to make that was important to me. And I worked for a great company that honored that and was able to facilitate that. But you have to make choices and decisions in your life because you're the ones that got to live it. You've got to walk in these shoes and live in this skin. And so I think too often we make either choices that aren't our choices. We make them for somebody else, or we make choices and then we have difficulty living with the consequences of those choices.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Obviously I was hoping you would. And it's, thank you. The reason it's such an important lesson is women in particular, we do have to pick family first sometimes. And it should always be at the forefront. But when you take the risk and you think it might hurt your position with your company, it's still the right decision. Sometimes, I mean, you have to evaluate based on your own experiences, right? But you're a perfect example of where it was just fine. It was just fine. You are able to spend the time with your family. You were there with your dad at the time it meant the most for him and for you. And look, we just announced your recent promotion today, right? So God works in mysterious ways, and it's about those choices you make every day. Thank you for sharing that. So Ben, let's get even more personal. Are you okay with that? So yes. I think you have a law degree.
I do.
All right. So let's talk about your legal experience. You didn't really like the practice of law.
So it was very interesting. I clerked for a judge in North Carolina, and then I started off practicing with Troutman in their Troutman. It's now Troutman Pepper, but it was Troutman Sanders at the time here in Atlanta in their labor and employment groups. I started off as an employment lawyer. And so what I loved was the problem solving kind of consultative piece of being a lawyer. What I hated were the briefs and the antagonistic litigation process.
Yeah.
I hated that. I hated how you'd sit in depositions trying to figure out how you could goad each other. And I hated responding to discovery requests with non-answers so that you could continue to fight about it. I mean, all that kind of stuff.
You love the time entry. You love putting the time.
Oh yeah, and living your life in 6-minute increments. I mean, who wants to live your life in 6-minute increments? Was the way that I felt. So, but you know, I had a really, really good mentor when I first started practicing law, though, who used to really focus me on the important stuff. I remember he had given me a memo to write, and the client wanted to do something. I came back and I told him the client can't do it, and he threw me out of his office. He said, "Get out." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Any lawyer can tell me no. Good lawyers figure out how to help the client get to yes. So get out and go get me an answer that'll work for our client, even if you have to help reshape the question that the client asked." And so that's the part of being a lawyer that I like.
Did you see Beth Keating? Beth Keating just responded. She's like, "For real."
That's right, Beth. That is right.
Our sister Beth, I love you, Beth Keating. She keeps it real, doesn't she?
She does. She does. It's good to see your little name flash across the bottom, Beth. I hope you're well.
Bentina, the legal degree certainly helped you be connected to energy. I mean, I know you didn't get into law to make that connection, but that's the journey you were on that connected you to a client that ultimately became your corporate boss, right?
Yeah. I always tell people you just never know how things work out. So I left Troutman Pepper and actually went to, it was CP&L at the time, and then became Florida Progress Progress Energy while I was there. But I kept in contact with the lawyer that had been the senior partner that I worked with, and he had gone in-house to Georgia Power, Southern Company. And so I kept in contact with him. I talked to him. You know, I was doing it because I liked him, right? I wasn't doing it because I thought that there would be anything down the road. I mean, I moved back to North Carolina thinking that's where I would stay. I was barred in both states, North Carolina and Georgia, both states. And he called me one day and he said, "We have a job here at Georgia Power that I think you are perfect for." And I went down for the interview, and quite honestly, I didn't think I would take the job. They made me an offer, and I called my Antonio, who's my husband now. He was my boyfriend at the time. And I was telling him, and he was like, "Girl, why don't you take that job?" You know? And so I took the job and I came down here to Atlanta, you know, to work for Georgia Power. But you're right, Lila, it was a practice of law that introduced me to Georgia Power. They were my major customer. And then it was maintaining that relationship that led to me returning. And it was all fortuitous and wonderful. And I'm happy that I'm here. I still keep in touch, of course, with lots of people at Progress Energy who made an impact on me. And they're just great folks too. Now it's Duke, part of Duke. But it kind of led me here. You couldn't have asked me at working for an energy company? Nah,
No, I completely agree. It's just right place, right time. Seeing the opportunity and saying yes. And in your case, seeing the opportunity and trusting Antonio to say yes. Good for him. And then you married him. And then
I did.
He's very practical. He gave you great advice and you married him.
I married him. It's 18 years this year. So we've been married, but 28 or 30 years that we've known each other. It's been forever, but 18 years.
Well, I'm hoping he'll come with you to Orlando. You've agreed to speak at the forum on an environmental justice panel. There's been another woman in energy that, there it is, October 27th through the 29th. And Bentina Terry will be on our one of our panels on the 27th. One of the women in energy that's watching today, Jennifer, is with a solar company. I look forward to you two meeting. She's also a lawyer. And there's so many opportunities for you to sit down with women in energy and let them get to know you the way that I've gotten to know you and just loved you instantly. You are, as you know, one of my dearest friends and personally impacted me, my children, my husband. It's very rare, right, that we mix business necessarily with our personal lives, but with your involvement with my family, with Leadership Florida, we all know that any of us can pick up the phone and talk to Aunt Bentina and get wonderful advice and your undivided attention. And not very many people in this world like that, but you
No,
are.
no, Lila, it is mutual. I mean, the opening, this is one of those things too, that the opening of your family and, your home, when I got to come by and see everybody. And quite honestly, you and I had some phenomenal conversations about culture and religion and all that kind of stuff. And I always tell people, when you meet people, you don't know that. You don't, you make some quick decisions sometimes about folks, but if you allow yourself to really get to know people, it really does grow you as a person. And it is knowing you that it has grown me. It's been just completely awesome to get to know you and your family and your side hustle,
Side hustle, which we got booted out. So Bentina's talking about heels and handbags, but I got kicked out by my husband. He evicted us. He found another tenant that would pay the rent. That's okay. Bentina, something you said I want to come back to, and thank you for that. I mean, obviously, it's important for me and you to talk about our culture, not just to one another, but to others. And it wasn't always that way for me. So as Bentina knows, I'm Arab American Muslim, and growing up, more often than not, people didn't understand what that meant, what that was. They'd make judgments based on what they thought it was. And I had to mature a bit, right? I had to gain my own self-confidence and maturity to be able to say, this is who I am. This is my religion. This is my culture. This is my heritage. I think that another commonality, right, for me and you is we're willing to do that. But I have to confess, Bentina, it took me a bit to be able to relax enough to say, this is who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, but it made it such a gift to me when you did, right? That you shared your world with me. And I do think that I hope that as a society we are getting to a much better place to be able to have those conversations and communicate. I'm the executive sponsor of our Asian Pacific employee resource group. And it has just tremendously expanded my understanding of Asian culture. And of course, there's a huge religious element to that is in some ways the same, because there are Christians who are Asian, and in some ways different. There are Muslim and Hindu, and it's just been, and this is Asian American Heritage Month, and it's just been phenomenal to be able to do that. And within our company, we're having more of those conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and different religions and different lifestyles or different sexual orientations and all that kind of stuff. And it just makes us all so much better to be able to have those conversations and to relate and understand each other one-on-one. And so it's a gift to me that it was something that we could talk about it. It really, really was. Because quite honestly, Lila, I didn't know that I knew anybody who was Muslim. Right. And so you were my resource set. And in fact, for the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking, I need to send Lila a text for Ramadan.
It's Ramadan. Yeah. And then I sent you to answer all your questions, right? Yeah, thank you. We've got 2 more weeks. Let's see, what's today? The 6th? 8 days, I guess. Yeah, 8 days. So this is that time of year where we just don't talk to Said until we all break the fast. Yeah. I so hope he's watching. He's not commenting, so that's a good thing.
You have to play it for him later.
That's right. We will. Bentina, so for the students that are listening to today's program, what would you want them to know about where to start to begin a career in energy? What words of advice would you give them?
So it's to really be open to it, right? And so there are so many things in energy to be passionate about, and I think that people don't realize it. But to give it a great chance. I mean, we are a rapidly evolving area that people don't even really realize, from more solar to electric vehicles. I mean, there's some great things going on in the energy sector. So investigate it and intern with an energy company or a company that's, involved in our sector. Or if you work at somewhere like me, right? So I just happened to work at a firm, but I got to work on the Georgia Power Southern Company work. And it was something that really opened my eyes to the sector. And so just really be open to it and allow yourself to learn and understand. It is important that there is no major economy that is healthy in this world that does not have a stable source of energy, a stable grid, reliability, all that kind of stuff. It is the bedrock of our economy. It really does fuel everything that we do. And people don't really think about that because we do such a good job as a sector of making that energy reliable. But the reality is it fuels everything that we do. It really does.
The economy of the world. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned internships. So Georgia Power has internships, or Southern Company?
Yeah, we do. We have internships. We have co-ops as well for those folks that are in settings where they have co-ops. But we do. We have those. If you have an office on your campus that handles your co-op program or your internship program, all you have to do is reach out to them and they will reach out to us. And then sometimes they're posted on our website. I can't remember how often that happens, but certainly the other thing you can do is to go on southerncompany.com/careers. And you can reach out to us about an internship or a co-op if it's not something your university or school will help you with.
It's wonderful. So I really don't want this to end. I don't want this to end. So my sister, I love you so much. We miss you in Florida. What a great treat this has been. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for being with all of us here in Florida and for making a difference in that 10 years you were here. I thought it flew by. See there?
It did. It did. You know, and I miss the warmth of the people. Yeah. That's what I tell people. I miss the water. Atlanta is landlocked. But the other thing is I really do miss the warmth of the people in Florida. And so it was an awesome period of time there. And I'm glad I got to make some great friends. And I am glad that I have kept in touch with many of them like you, Lila. You were a joy.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. So I will see you in October.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it.
We'll hug. Have you been vaccinated?
I have been vaccinated.
Yeah, yes. Me too. Go get vaccinated, folks.
That's right.
Because we miss our hugs. We do. We miss our hugs.
I'm ready to get back to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.
I appreciate it.